Hi, good afternoon. I see that there are a couple people on the line. My name is Laura Long. I'm with the Partner Support Center. I just wanted to go ahead and welcome you and let you know that we'll get started in just a few minutes. Not like you ever laid your eyes on. Where? Good afternoon to everyone that's on the line. We will get started in just a few minutes. We're going to wait a little past 2 o'clock just to make sure that everybody that wants to join the call joins for the beginning of the call. If you don't mind, we are getting a little bit of feedback. So if you don't mind, unless you're speaking, if you could mute your microphone, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you so much.
How you doing?
Good, thank you. I hope you're doing well.
Doing fine.
Hello?
Hey, good afternoon. This is Laura with the Partner. Hey, this is Laura with the Partner Support Center. So I'm just giving everybody a couple extra minutes to make sure that they're logged on so that they can be a part of the beginning of the call. So just hang in there for a couple minutes and we'll get started, okay?
Sounds good.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Civil Rights Data Collection State Education Agency Engagement Monthly Meeting. My name is Laura Long, and I'm representing the Partner Support Center. So I've wanted to go over our agenda. First, we'll do some introductions. We'll talk about the Partner Support Center trends. We'll also talk about the 2017-18 data submission status, how we can continue to support LEAs, extension requests. We'll get some feedback from the SEAs. We'll talk about our future meetings, and of course, we'll take any questions that you may have. First, I'd like to introduce Janice Brown with the Office for Civil Rights.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, Janice. And then I have myself, I'm Laura, and then we also have Antoinette Goins.
Hello, everyone. How are you this afternoon?
Thanks, Antoinette. So, and I also wanted to open the floor to the SEAs on the call and give them a chance to introduce themselves, please.
Hi, this is Tara from North Carolina.
Hey, Tara.
Hi, this is Linda from Arkansas.
Hey, Linda.
Hi, this is Livette from Georgia.
Good afternoon.
Okay, this is Candy Johnson with Kentucky.
Glad you're here.
This is Susan Rose Adams from Wisconsin.
Hey, Susan.
Hi.
Hi, Laura. This is Kathy Gosa with the SLDS State Support Team.
Hey, Kathy. Glad to have you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for introducing themselves. I really appreciate it. I'm really glad you're here as well. So we'll go ahead and talk about some of the Partner Support Center ticket trends since the last time that we had our meeting. So between April 18th and May 22nd, we had 6,807 tickets that were created by the Partner Support Center. Of those 6,807, 2,400 were submission system assistance questions. These are mostly questions about logging into the submission system, resolving warnings and errors, and uploading CSV files. 1,686 tickets were related to outreach, which include broadcast messages sent by the Partner Support Center. We had 992 LEA requests, which include adding or removing schools or facilities from a district's profile. We had 733 general questions, which are often related to the CRDC and if an LEA is required to report. We had 434 account maintenance questions, which are relative to verifying LEA contact information and requests for login information. We had 312 policy questions, which are often related to the school form and the LEA form questions and questions about definitions or instructions. We had 113 tickets that were related to data quality, which are identifying and correcting potential data quality issues. We had 58 pre-collection tool tickets, which are related to the Excel templates, the school and LEA forms, and the flat file specifications. We had 45 tickets related to technical issues, which are generally related to how to navigate the submission tool. We had 27 tickets that were related to LEA feedback, mostly related to the broadcast messages that were sent by the Partner Support Center, and then 7 that were related to documentation, such as pre-submission documents, data tips, or submission documents. As of May the 14th, we had 91.49% of our LEA population certified and 8.51% of our LEA population not certified. As of yesterday, we had 94.25% of our LEA certified and 5.75% remaining to be certified. So I wanted to talk a little bit how we can continue to support LEAs, especially those that have not certified yet. Just as a reminder, state certification progress reports are available in the data submission tool. These reports provide the SEA level summary of LEA submission progress. The Partner Support Center will continue to conduct outreach to LEAs who are not certified. SEAs are also encouraged to communicate and provide support to their LEAs, especially those who haven't certified yet. When a school or LEA is unable to provide the data for the CRDC, OCR requires the development of an action plan to ensure that accurate and complete data are submitted for the next collection cycle. In order to activate that action plan feature in the submission system, LEAs must send an email request to the Partner Support Center, including the LEA's information, as well as the certifier's details. Once the feature has been activated, the LEA will then be able to create an action plan in the submission system. Districts should be sure to address all questions on the action plan form in order to expedite the action plan's approval process. It's very important that LEAs that are missing data or unable to submit some of their data should not enter zeros in order to clear errors or warnings. Entering zeros rather than submitting an action plan for missing data will have a highly negative impact on the quality of the data being submitted. If LEAs are not able to submit a section or a group of data, they should always submit an action plan. Are there any questions around that, or any feedback that I can help with?
I think that's good information. Here in North Carolina, we unintentionally submitted bunches of zeros for our district. The action plan, I've been doing this for the last three collections, and this is something that is new to me, so thank you for the information.
Absolutely. Thanks for that feedback, Tara. I really appreciate that. So given our conversation around how do we get everyone that is still not certified, how do we get them to certify, we want to talk a little bit about extension requests. The PSC has reached out to all of the districts that did not certify their data by May the 14th in order to notify them to submit an extension request through the submission system. To submit an extension request, LEAs are expected to include all of their challenges, their current status, and planned efforts to complete the submission. Requests should include specific tasks and a timeline for the completion of this collection by the requested extension date. Once those requests are completed in the submission system, they are then escalated to the Office for Civil Rights in order to be reviewed and potentially approved. Okay, and since we're very close to wrapping up the 17-18 collection, I wanted to take a moment to reach out to everyone that's on the call and get some of your feedback. So the more feedback that you can provide, the better that we can facilitate our relationship with you and your districts and really work towards making this next collection even better. So I just wanted to take some time to ask you some questions. If you could please give me your feedback, I'd really appreciate it. If these questions aren't relative to what you'd like to speak about, of course, put anything on the table and we'd love to talk about it. So what types of communication strategies worked well for your state during this collection?
Hi,
Anyone?
This is Susan from Wisconsin.
Hey.
I hosted biweekly open forum Q&A sessions throughout from the opening to the closing date of the collection. And that seemed to help. I mean, and I did a running agenda with all the Q&A so that all the users could go in and search for existing questions and answers.
And did you do that in the form of a webinar, like an open webinar,
Yes.
and you said bi-weekly?
Yes. Bi-weekly, I did a Teams meeting, a webinar.
Okay. I really like that idea.
That's great,
so
Susan.
North Carolina, with North Carolina, we started the process as soon as we knew what the requirements were and started doing notifications, making sure they had their contacts ready. Towards the end, we did a few webinars in regard to our, in-state process. Pointed the users to the documentation as the collection actually opened, and we were able to load the data on behalf of the districts. And at the end, even though we did not get 100% certification for our state, which I'm disappointed in personally, we sent out the report daily for what were supposed to be the last 2 weeks of the collection, and then continued with that until our due date, which was extended to the 6th. In addition, if we found that we weren't getting a response from charters, for example, we worked with the Office of Charter Schools to contact them, and then ultimately at the federal level, we had a contact that got involved.
That's great, Tara. Thank you so much for doing that, and same to you, Susan. I'm sure that sending out the reports and having biweekly sessions were extremely helpful to the LEAs, and on behalf of the Partner Support Center, we want to say thank you for providing that type of support. It's really helpful, so thank you very much. So how was the testing window helpful to your SEA?
I thought the testing window was too short.
Too short.
Too short. Okay.
I agree. It was too short.
For those of us that are working in an agile environment, your testing window fell right in the middle of 2 sprints. So I couldn't get resources for both sprints. I could only have them for like a week. So it was not good.
Okay. That's really good to know. Thanks for pointing that out.
Also, whenever I thought it was too short as well, and whenever I did upload a file, I thought I would get all of the, not just the fact that the file was accepted, but if there were any errors or anything of that nature, I would have gotten them. That didn't occur. It did upload my file. It did receive my file. It did indicate how many records were there and so on and so forth. But when the window opened for the LEAs to come in and upload, start working with the data, we pre-populated as much as possible again. And at that point in time, I got different errors that I didn't get prior. So I was a little curious about that.
So I know that when you upload the file, you're given a feedback that says like you successfully uploaded your file with 0 errors and 100%.
It told me at that point if there was something in error, because we did have some information in error, so we cleaned that up and uploaded again, and they came back with no errors at that time. All of that happened during testing.
Right, and then, so those aren't necessarily submission errors or warnings. So when you go to the certification tab and you look at the errors and warnings that are listed there, that has to do with the relationship between data elements, not necessarily the success of uploading the file. So there are 2 different kinds of prongs with how these errors and the warnings are given. Some have to do with the success of the file being uploaded, and that's your primary concern. And then secondarily, you're looking at submission level errors and warnings that have to do with the relationship between data elements and whether something falls within the expected range or if it's a viable entry. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Oh, absolutely.
This is North Carolina. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, Susan, I don't want to cut you off.
That's okay. Go ahead.
Okay. I agree. It was too short. In the first collection that I participated in, which I realized that vendors or the contractors changed, we had a test window that almost mimicked the actual collection period, and it would be ideal because to have a concurrent test instance as we go through the process, because yes, primarily we're concerned about upload errors initially, but once I don't know about the other states, but once we started to participate in this collection with the LEAs, we are also then, regardless of whether it was something that was intentional or not, we're also then expected to support the errors in the data. And having time to understand those errors, that would be really helpful to be able to use a test instance and not use their production instance, to see if there's any kind of issue there. Does that make sense what I'm trying to explain?
So this is kind of what I'm getting from that, is that you'd like some time outside of the production window in order to understand the errors and the warnings that are generated by the data, so that you can, when it does come time for the full collection, you have experience with resolving those issues. Is that right?
Yeah, and it's not so much. I think that the warnings and the errors in the system are great. I think that they are very intuitive, but it could be something on, in regard to our data set that we need to review and fix. So I find the warnings and the errors to be extremely helpful and can generally, target what the data are. But yeah, it would be ideal for us to have more opportunity to explore that side of it, because that's the LEA world. And, if you have large numbers of districts with large schools, that's a lot of data to weed through. Another thing that I would like to say about the test instance, or about the instance itself, is it would be ideal also to have documentation about the edits that are existing in the system. Not the warnings or the errors, but the actual edit checks on values. So that we can be prepared for that as well, because that would reduce the number of errors potentially upon load from the state.
Right. So you mean, when you say like edit checks, you mean what is it checking against, right? Like what are the acceptable thresholds? Or okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. What value or what cell is it checking against? Or what system is it checking against? Which you see that in some of the warnings and the errors, But yeah, it would be nice to have documentation, because we could help tailor. It kind of comes to the point of what's current. What are you considering a current cumulative piece of data or data set versus what's a snapshot? So
no, that makes complete sense, and
I
think that's a great suggestion, and I think it's something that we should definitely look into for sure. I think that's really great feedback. Thank you, Tara.
Thank you.
Okay, so go ahead. I'm sorry.
This is Susan from Wisconsin. Have you ever considered doing an L1 validation that validates our file upload, includes every data element? Whether it has, so that there's not one data element missing.
That, Susan, is something I'm going to have to take a look into and follow up with you.
Because I don't know about other states, but it seems like the team that builds our data file, they do it from scratch every 2 years. So they don't start out with the former one. So they rebuild the file and redo the calculations, because our EdFi data model is impacting our data warehouse so much that all the calculations change. However, someone left out one question, 1A, all the data fields under question 1A for enrollment got totally skipped in the file upload. Never got caught in the test.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that's a very important L1 validation that I would like to see implemented in the test.
That makes a lot of sense.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, I think that's really great feedback. I really appreciate it, and that's something that I'm more than happy to look into and follow up with everyone on. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for that feedback. So what features of the submission system were most useful?
Definitely the upload, and that was feedback that I received from the LEAs if they had to do, let's say they just mass uploaded the teacher's attendance, which we don't collect at the state level. They find that very helpful, very flexible. The reporting is pretty solid, and I like that the resources are available within the system and that you've got the questions embedded.
Thanks, Tara.
This may not be the system, but one of your tools, your templates for your LEA form and your school form, which auto-generate their flat file.
Mhm.
I recommended smaller districts that didn't have the ability to extract their data from their vendors, because Wisconsin, we moved to EdFi, so we weren't collecting the high volume of data we had in previous collections. So they were trying to manually look up all these values and go into the tool and enter them. And I said, why don't you just build your own flat file? And I walked them through your templates, and they were well received.
Oh, that's great. That's great to hear, because we've had some conversations about the templates and how we can improve them and where we see them going and how they'll be helpful in the next collection. So that's really good feedback. Thank you, Susan. Okay. And how can the Partner Support Center further facilitate your SEA's relationship with its LEAs?
Maybe it's my learning style, but it would be great if, like the tools that Susan's talking about, we built some of our own in-house tools, and there's a lot of information on your website, but what helps an SEA help an LEA? And what would you recommend as far as the best pieces of documentation and, that kind of thing? That would be helpful, because I discover things each year, and then I wonder, should I have known that before?
Yeah, absolutely. And we can take a look at some of the technical assistance documentation that we have available on the GRAD's website and see how we can update it in order to make it more useful to the SEAs and how they can help their districts, for sure. Thank you, Tara. And speaking of the GRAD 360 website, how is that useful to the SEAs, this collection?
Hi, this is Linda from Arkansas, and I ended up using the Grad 360 community website a lot, because this was Arkansas's first year assisting their LEAs with the CRDC data submission. It was very helpful in some aspects. However, it was a case of the blind leading the blind when it came to finding information for where they should go or where I should go to find information. So the broadcasts were helpful. However, I would have preferred to get something in an email stating that these are our dates and everything, because I was the contact for 262 districts. And believe me, I had to figure out where I was going in order to help them figure out where they needed to go to find information. So it was helpful in some aspects, but then again, too, it just may have been, this is our first year. A lot of the contacts had changed in our LEAs, and they didn't know. The people who were assigned didn't know where to go. I didn't know where to tell them to go, and so on and so forth. So it was quite a learning experience for our first time.
Absolutely, and thank you for that feedback, Linda. There are several documents available on the Grad 360 website, and that's where we also post the slides from our SEA engagement calls. And I understand that sometimes a little bit of feedback is useful, and some emails could be useful as well, just driving home some of the points. So that makes sense completely. Is there anything else that we should talk about? We don't have to limit ourselves to these questions in particular.
I think that our closing date was a little difficult this year for the eastern states. It was actually, it was during our spring break time, and I'm not really sure, how that might have impacted the rest of the nation, but it was tough for us to have that outreach and to get to people as they're cycling through, 2 weeks of spring break, like half the states on, one time frame and half, 1 week, and then half the states on the other. So that posed a challenge because that is time where the LEAs and the schools, they absolutely take that time off. So that was a little sticky.
That makes a lot of sense, Tara. Thank you. That's definitely something that we'll take into consideration moving forward.
Another thing that maybe is a different discussion, I don't know, but the data that we collect, cumulative versus snapshot, seems to conflict with the edit checks that are in the system. And it may be that I don't know enough yet. I'm not experienced enough yet, but I find the timelines for the data to be a bit confusing. It would be ideal if we chose, say, the end of the year, all cumulative, or we went all snapshot, because the enrollment in the system, the overall enrollment seems to validate a good portion of the data that we're importing, but not all of the data seem to follow the rule of the snapshot date. So by that, what I mean is our overall student enrollment is as of October 1. But it seems to me that data, that our incident data are validating against that. But incident data are considered cumulative all year. So that's odd to me. And perhaps the edit check documentation would help identify where there seem to be some oddities. Sorry that I talk so much, guys.
No, that's great, Tara. Thank you. Janice, would you mind to speak a little bit to why some of the data is reported cumulatively versus snapshot date, and how when they do the data checks from cumulative against enrollment? Could you speak a little bit about that for me, please?
Sure, no problem. I know most of you are probably familiar with our Office for Special Education and those students that are served by IDEA. And so a lot of times you are also reporting information to that office, that federal education office as well, about your IDEA students. And so we kind of mirrored that within the CRDC in asking about that information at that snapshot date. And so most of those data elements are looking at that subset of students. Then the majority of them are, so when you think about snapshot, it's focused on those students. But then the rest of it is, we do want to know about your students in all of your schools for that school year, whichever one we're looking at. Like now it's the 17-18 school year. So we are looking at the end of the year. So when you're talking about courses, when you're talking about any instances of discipline and things like that, we're asking about the full year. We do try to make sure within the system that when we're making checks of the data, we are, comparing it to the right kind of benchmark, whether, for the enrollment, and also to make sure that we take into consideration that enrollments do change over time, over the time of a school year. so that it could go up or down. And so there is built into the checks kind of a little margin of kind of plus or minus. So you won't get a warning or an error triggered. But I will say if you all are finding that it's being triggered, warnings are being triggered because of this a little bit more often, we can look at those rules again and maybe expand that margin so that it's not triggering it as much. We realize that student populations can change over time. Sometimes children are maybe a little transient or migrating, and if that's happening a little bit more within the schools, and so maybe 5 or 10 change isn't enough. I'm just giving an example. Then let us know, and we can start looking at those rules now so that we could give a little bit more wiggle room for the next collection.
How do we do
Thank you,
that?
Janet.
What is it that we can do to give you this information? Because I thought I was seeing errors that were where my student population, and an example is incident data because they want the DISAG data, or the aggregate data, sorry. But it appeared to me that it was actually validating against the enrollment and would throw an error if, for example, for whatever reason, I have a student who was suspended who was an Asian female, and that data are supposed to be cumulative. But I had no Asian female in my overall enrollment because she wasn't there at the snapshot date. That's the best example I can give you off the top of my head.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. And so therefore, since you had none reported at the snapshot, then I see what you're saying. It's giving you an error at the end because you're saying now there is one.
So
okay.
then the user has to choose, did we have one in the snapshot or did we have one in the, or are we taking out the incident?
Right. It should be comparing, same groups across time, but we can definitely take a look at it. Can you, just kind of you can just even send it to the Partner Support Center, just a little blurb about, which district you are and where you saw that occur and which data element?
I might have a note, but I don't think I have anything detailed for you. But I will definitely look. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And Tara, you could send that. Sorry, I just wanted to say you could send that directly to me if you. Yeah.
I'd be happy to. Oh, and the final thing about the test instance. I'm so sorry. I've been waiting to speak to you guys. I've been excited about this. It would this fantasy concurrent or side test instance would have another very useful application to it, and that is for those of us who are supporting the LEAs to have time to delve into the system when we're not in the thick of it, and to practice. We're not looking for, or I'm not looking for, create a new year for me. Keep 1718 in there, for example, and let me continue to run the files so I become more adept at what I'm doing, even if the requirements change every 2 years. And this would not be a tool that I would be sharing with the LEAs unless I had permission, but it really isn't my intention. It's more so that I can become more familiar and support it better.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But it really is hard to do that while you're right in the middle of it.
Right.
I mean, you learn as you go, of course, but...
Would it also be helpful, because I know AEM has these constraints about when you can let people into the system because they're kind of after we finish this collection, they're going to turn it over, for the 1920 collection. They're going to be making changes to the tool. So, even I'm locked out of it at that point. But would it be helpful if you had some, webinars or workshops that kind of give you that hands-on tutorial about the tool
Yeah, absolutely.
As an alternative?
Any bit would help. Yeah, absolutely. I learned, like I said, I learn new things all the time about it. And if you guys have tips and tricks and a workshop or a webinar, I think would be great. Given everybody's time frames and priorities, I think that would work.
Okay, great. We'll look into that, as well as seeing if we could keep the tool open or make it available at different points in time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to you both. I really appreciate that. That's really useful, and I think it would be really helpful to the entire user population if we had more information about the submission tool available to our LEAs and our SEAs. So thank you. And then, unless we have any other feedback or questions or concerns, I just wanted to say that our next meeting will be on June the 20th at 2 o'clock, and if you have any topics of interest for the next meeting, to let me know, contact the Partner Support Center. If you have any new contact information, of course, please go ahead and shoot that over. I'd be happy to take it down. And just as a reminder, the Partner Support Center is available Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. We're available via email at crdc@aemcorp.com or phone at 1-855-255-6901. But if you have any other questions or feedback or anything that you'd like to talk about while we're here, I'm happy to keep this going.
Thanks, Laura and team.
Okay.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And if you think of something, if you're like me, you'll think of something 2 seconds after we get off the call. So just email the Partner Support Center, and we'll be happy to, or you can use the discussion board on the SEA work group in the community's website for any of your questions, concerns, feedback, and we'll be happy to get back to you that way as well. So thank you so much for joining today. It's a pleasure as always, and I look forward to talking to everybody next month or sooner.
Thank you.
All right,
Enjoy the holiday weekend.
Thank you.